There are tons of stories out there about hacked Pokemon games. Some are really quite neat, as like the one about the version where you get to play as Ghost as a starter, but some are really ridiculous and silly stories about individuals dying after playing a game, or the game talking to them. God, don't these writers know that less is more when it comes to these stories? Oh well, I digress. I grew interested in these hacked games that are apparently in any thrift store, on eBay, or handed out by homeless people to a random passerby. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting these creepy people. I merely found this particular cartridge in a trash bin when the dumpster truck backed into my neighbor's dumpster. I noticed the game and asked the trash man if I could take it. He didn't seem to mind. It was thrown away after all. I, of course, checked with my neighbor to confirm that they actually didn't want it, though they seemed perplexed. They'd never seen it before in their life. Their son made a grab for it, a little boy who saw Charizard on the cover, crying, "Pokemon! Mommy, I want!" But his mother told him no, seeing as I found it. He didn't even have a Game Boy anyway. He just liked Pokemon. Thinking nothing more, I simply went home. Looking at the cartridge's sticker on the way, it was just a plain old red version. The sticker torn slightly across Charizard's neck, but that was expected with such an old game. I had the blue version as a kid, so I was eager to see the, albeit minimum, differences red version had. I was rather disappointed by what I saw when the title screen showed up. Pokemon Strangled red version. Well, damn it, it was a hack. I mean, hacks are neat and all, but they have zero monetary value. The originals are quite valuable by now. I wanted to play red anyway, not this crap. Oh well, it was free. Might as well try it. The name was odd, however. Strangled Red? Makes no sense. Not even in a morbid description of someone being asphyxiated. As people turn blue when choking, not red. Who knows? Maybe there were a pair of these hacks and I just got the red one. The more I thought about this though, the more interested I became. My initial disappointment turned into curiosity, and I wanted to know what the creator had made. And I was going to note everything I saw. The first oddity I noticed was the start screen had a Charizard next to the trainer instead of a Charmander. Also, the Pokemon never cycled through like the old versions did. It just stayed as Charizard, even after 5 minutes of waiting. Shrugging, I hit start, noticing there was no Charizard cry as I did, like there was supposed to be. I saw there was a continue option, so I figured I'd do what everyone did when a used game comes their way, and see what the previous owner had done. No. I blinked in surprise. No? What do you mean no? The game wouldn't let me continue no matter what. Though on my fourth attempt, I heard the Charizard cry. Quiet and barely audible, but there. Shrugging it off, I just decided to hit new game. Like I would have done after checking the old file anyway. The screen cut to black for a while. No Professor Oak, no starting theme, just nothing. Eventually, the screen came back, showing a bedroom, 2 TVs, 2 beds, a computer, just, in the corner. My trainer sprite was the usual one, consistent with the original red version. I was curious as to why it didn't ask my name, even though I was answered as I opened the pause menu. I noticed that my trainer was named Steven. No, this isn't my real name or some stupid crap like that. This game isn't self-aware or haunted, at least not that I know of. It was just a name that had already been chosen. Curious, I saw that he had the starter amount of money. No badges. He didn't look like Red though. His hair was longer, almost reaching halfway down his back. Red's usual smile replaced with a confident smirk. Honestly, I found this sprite much cooler than Red. Next, I checked out his Pokemon. A single Charmander, level 5, named Miki. Nothing was odd about it, or should I say, with the name and all. She had beginning Charmander stats, only knew Scratch, Tail Whip, basic stuff. The game seemed relatively normal. Returning to the game, I walked about the room, noticing Steven's long hair was present on the back of my trainer sprite when the back was turned to the camera. I didn't recognize the house, but I descended the stairs to see more. Downstairs was another trainer, who spoke the instant I came down. Ready yet? Yeah. I assumed this person, named Mike, was my rival, pre-decided for me. A replacement of Blue, most likely, though I thought back to the bedroom having 2 beds, realizing that we weren't just rivals, we were brothers. They talked back and forth, basic Pokemon dialogue, become a Pokemon master, catch 'em all, stuff like that. Before having a little argument over which is better, Charmander or Squirtle, which of course led to the introduction battle. Like the one versus Blue in the lab, simple enough, scratch, tackle, till I won purely from having the first turn. I took note of how much better Steven's sprite was in combat than Red's. A different pose, his hair looking like it was blowing in the wind, a brief minor upgrade, but still much nicer. I left the house after some banter with my brother, stepping out to the Palatown theme. Going to the east, I found this was indeed Palatown. The house was simply on the outskirts to the west. I noted there was no mysterious grassy field like in the normal Palatown. Wandering around, I decided to check out Red's home. His mother was inside, and when I talked to her, she commented on how handsome Steven looked, hoping her son would look up to him as a role model when he became a trainer himself next year, which of course led me to realize the game took place 1 year before the original Pokemon. Red was even upstairs playing the SNES in his room, commenting, "I'm gonna be the best too when it's my turn." I was starting to like this hack. It was interesting, a completely new adventure, a different character. Hell, Steven even seemed to have a history with the people in the town, a reputation, a personality beyond the silent protagonist. The people in the town talked to him as a person, making conversation and not just spouting tutorial crap. Even Blue's sister had new dialogue. They seemed to be in a relationship too, as the dialogue ended with a kiss and a heart over her head. Professor Oak simply wished me well, giving me a Pokédex to aid my adventure. He wasn't giving it to me to be the reason behind the adventure, like every other Pokemon game out there. He gave it to me out of kindness, something to help me on my way, a gift. I was liking this more and more with each second. The game seemed to have actual story now. I was somebody, not just the cookie-cutter protagonist anyone could be, not some blank sheet that could be replaced without notice. The story was different, though the actual gameplay remained unchanged. I went north like I was supposed to, went from town to town collecting badges and receiving praise from the leaders. Steven's fame even seemed to spread, as some NPCs would talk like they knew him. I used Miki for every battle, and she was growing surprisingly fast. She handled Brock with ease, even pounded Misty with no trouble at all. She wasn't as adversely affected by super effective attacks as others, and she did more damage than regular Charmanders. She was a veritable powerhouse. She even became a Charizard at the mere level of 25. Not bad at all, I must say. Things started to get weird though, as soon as I reached Lavender Town. I know. Lavender Town is the focus behind every creepy story, but it was the only place that was noticeably different. There was no Team Rocket invasion, which I found odd, though I did remember that this was a year in the past, so the invasion wouldn't occur until Red's time. I tried to enter the Pokemon Tower, aiming to get a Ghastly, but this is when it got all odd. Steven said, "I have no reason to be here." Steven wouldn't go into the Pokemon Tower, no matter what I did. This was weird. I mean, hell, there are a million places in Kanto you really have no need to be. Little random houses with nothing but children NPCs, for example. Why was it that Steven wouldn't enter? With a shrug, I figured I wouldn't need Ghastly, seeing as Miki could handle everything, so I simply went on my way. Lavender Town serving no purpose other than a passageway with a Pokemon Center. The game progressed normally from there, and the remaining gyms fell, and eventually I made my way to the Elite Four, and defeated them too. As with Blue, my brother, Mike, was there before me, initiating the championship battle, which Mickey swept with ease. The aftermath of the battle was quite pleasant. None of the tension that was present between Red and Blue at the end of their match. The brothers congratulated each other on their progress and shook hands before the screen went white. No Hall of Fame, nor any credits. When the screen came back, it was at the house again, the two brothers sitting at the computer, conversing with each other. Steven said, "I don't want to." Mike, "Come on, I just gotta borrow her for a second, just to finish my Pokédex entry. I won't register it unless she recognizes me as a master, just for a second. But she's my Mickey. I promise I'll give her back. Please, come on." A yes or no option popped up. I was a bit perplexed, so I hit no, just to be cautious. "Come on, please." No. Come on, please. I realized this would just simply continue to loop until I hit yes. So I did, just to see what would happen. Alright! This will just take a sec, then we'll both be Pokemon Masters. Steven just remained silent. The screen changed to the animation shown when two people trade Pokemon, which I found a bit weird seeing as I was solo. But whatever, this was apparently supposed to happen. Mickey went first. I watched lazily as it began to travel down the tube. Snap! That made me jump, the sudden noise resonating in my silent bedroom, loud due to the volume being way up. Looking at the screen, I noticed the game had seemed to freeze. Mickey was still in mid-trade, but the game wasn't doing anything. With a sigh, I just turned off the game, wondering when my last save was. When the game turned back on, I stared for a moment at the screen. There was no Charizard next to the trainer. Upon pressing start, I saw the new game option was absent, leaving only continue. This was strange, to say the least, so I selected it. The game starting without even showing my stats as usual. My jaw dropped at what I was greeted with. 1 year later. The Lavender Town theme came first, playing its normal way, the screen slowly fading from the blackness. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower, which made the music even stranger, seeing as how the tower had its own theme. He was standing in front of a tombstone, not doing anything. Wondering what was going on, I pressed A. Steven said nothing. Confused, I tried walking, realizing I was indeed in control at the moment. I brought up the pause menu and checked my party. Miki was gone. Not just Miki, all Pokemon. He had nothing. The Pokédex was absent from the menu. His bag was empty. Honestly concerned, I checked his trainer card. He had no money, no badges, and his playtime was 8,795 hours, which is impossible, as I only had 30 logged in before. But that wasn't the strangest part. His picture. The picture of the handsome, confident young trainer was different. His eyes were blank, his face turned slightly down, his smirk was gone, replaced by a lack of any expression at all. That long hair of his, before in a perfect perm, was now messy and unkempt. I couldn't look at him anymore. Closing the menu, I went to move out of the tower, but with every step I took away from the tombstone, the screen flickered, like it did when the Pokemon was poisoned. Gulping, I brought up the trainer card again. His picture was getting even worse. Every step I took, he hung his head more and more. His shoulders slumped. He bent over. By the time I had exited the tower, he was on his knees, hands to his face, hair draped across him. I had guessed already what was going on, but this clinched it. I began to put some things together in my mind. I had always wondered why there was no champion in the original games besides your rival. Why it is you, the protagonist, that has to be your rival, when he just waltzes in. No previous champion to challenge. Then it struck me. The answer was right here. The previous champion gave up. His precious Miki was apparently dead, and with her, so died part of him. His Pokédex, the other Pokemon, his badges, his fame, all of it, he threw away. And in that year, the year that I missed, the year where all the hours came from, yeah, I even did the math. There are 8,765 hours in a year. Add that to my 30 from before, and it all matches up. Even so, the game kept going. This should have been an ending, I thought. I mean, what else is there to do? I had no Pokédex, no Pokemon, not anything. What was I supposed to be doing? I talked to everyone in town, but they all said similar things. Are you okay? Still mourning, I see. Everything will be alright. Please, is there anything we can do? Steven never replied to them, as they all just simply said the same things over and over. I couldn't put the game down now. This was all so strange. Curious, I headed off to the tall grass and eventually got into a battle with a Rattata. No Pokemon was sent out, just Steven's sprite. I was wondering how I'd battle. Wild Rattata left you be. The battle ended without anything happening. This was certainly interesting, and it happened with every Pokemon I encountered. Wild Pidgey ignored you. Wild Ponyta wandered off. The music never changed either. No matter where I went, Lavender Town came from the speakers, following me. Sometimes slowed down slightly, sometimes not. I searched everywhere, every town, and talked to everybody. wondering just what the hell I needed to do. My frustration was mixing with the depressing atmosphere of it all, making the experience of it all unnerving and uncomfortable. But I couldn't tear myself away. I was starting to get a bit angry though. No one was telling me anything besides giving me their condolences and trying to give me items like lemonade or coffee, each met with Stephen replying, "No." I slapped myself for idiocy, suddenly realizing how the likely answer was right in front of me. Palatown, of course. When I went there though, which took a long time, having to walk, no Pokemon to fly with, no bicycle to ride, and Stephen only moved at about half the regular movement speed, it wasn't much different. I first tried talking to Professor Oak. "These things happen. You were just unlucky." Next I tried Blue Sister. "Please, don't leave home again." Red's mum wouldn't even talk to me at all. With nowhere else in mind to go, I walked west, finding the house from the beginning, which I'd never entered since leaving Palatown. Inside was Mike, but talking to him was just as useless. I'm so sorry." I pondered for a moment if this was really the ending. Stephen doomed to do nothing but roam Kanto in misery, haunted by the memories, forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. As a last-ditch effort to do anything, I went to the bedroom and walked over to the bed. Stephen said, "I'm going to sleep." The screen faded to black for a moment, but then it slowly faded back in, the world having a black tint to it. The Mike sprite laying in the other bed. I assumed this meant it was night. "I'm going to do it." Do what? Again, I had no idea. I tried inspecting everything in the room, but nothing happened. As soon as I left the house, another dialogue from Stephen. "It can bring her back. It can do anything." What the hell was it? Something that could do anything. I couldn't for the life of me figure out. Wandering about, I tried to leave Palatown the usual way. Not that way. He wouldn't go any further. I tried Holmes. Screw them! I quirked my eyebrow at that, forgetting for a moment this was not a real Pokemon game. The vulgarity just took me off guard. I continued to look around, but there was nowhere I could go, until I accidentally stepped on the ocean, and Stephen walked right in. Only the upper half of him was visible, like the swimmers you encounter in Cerulean Gym. I didn't know he could swim. The missing one. Missing one? I paused for a moment. No, he couldn't possibly mean that. I hadn't tried missing no trick on this hack yet, but it just fit too well. That had to be what it meant. I surfed all the way towards Cinnabar. I began to feel something was off, more than it already was. Silence. The Lavender Town theme had stopped, and there was no noise at all, nor were there any Pokemon. I just kept going, finding Cinnabar and surfing up and down the east coast. Lo and behold, Wild Missing No appeared. Mine. Wild Missing No was caught. What the hell? Stephen didn't even do anything. He just commanded that atrocity of broken data to join him. No, become his possession. And it did. I was getting more and more disturbed by it all. Clicking the start menu, I saw Missing No was not my party, but instead an item, making things even stranger. I checked the trainer card as well. Stephen had his back to me, his long hair draped behind him, his hands in his pockets, but nothing else. Remembering what he said at the start of the night, I realized what I had to do. I surfed to land and made my way northeast to, where else, Lavender Town. Along the way I noticed all the trainers, oddly still out at this hour, wouldn't look at Stephen, all of them turning away when he passed, even those that were normally static. I tried talking to one of the officers in the guardhouse type buildings. Just go. They all said the same thing, though one sent chills down my spine. Sometimes dead is best. My hands were sweating by this point. Stephen was about to try the impossible, something some would see as a crime against nature, which many of these people shared that opinion. I steeled myself. It's just a game, and I was going to complete it. It took an eternity to reach Pokemon Tower, but I got there eventually. Taking a deep breath, I headed towards the tombstone. I remembered which one. The image of Stephen standing there before would be burned into my mind after all. First I tried inspecting it. Stephen just replied, "Mihiki." Nothing happened. With a gulp, I opened the menu and selected Missing No from the bag. "Stephen, don't use it!" Professor Oak screamed out. I was reminded of when Professor Oak would magically tell you that you couldn't use the key item somewhere, like when trying to use a bicycle in a building. Though the message this time was different. Even worse, Stephen responded to it. In a world that cheated me, why should I play fair? Stephen used it. Stephen obtained. What in God's name did I attain? I couldn't tell you because the game took away my control. Without my input, Stephen just began to leave the tower on his own. Walking single step by single step, the Lavender Town theme started again, and he left the tower and began his excruciatingly slow journey against my will. Every time he crossed one of the borders where the music would change, it just got progressively slower, more and more disturbing, and by the time he reached Cerulean City, it was just a demonic rumbling. I just stared, watching him, trying to guess where he was going, but it was getting more and more obvious. He was heading to Pallet Town. The music had all but stopped when he got there. Playing single note by single note, he went exactly where I guessed, right to his own house, inside and up the stairs. At this point, there was no music. Stephen moved step by step, stopping at his brother's bed, turning to face him. At first I thought the game froze. He didn't do anything, he just simply stood there. I couldn't move him. I did, however, find out that I could open the pause menu. I was terrified to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I selected his trainer card. There was a low growl noise, like a distorted Pokemon cry. Stephen was looking at me again, directly at the screen. He was hunched over, his bangs obscuring his face. His hair was wild and feathered out. Between his bangs, there wasn't even a face at all, just black. 2 red eyes looking straight forward, a white grin contrasting with the darkness. That wasn't all. His name was now Stephen in League speak. I couldn't look away, my eyes glued to his, not breaking contact for some time. My vision was getting blurry until I couldn't see very well, and my face grew wet. I was crying like a baby. There was nothing I could do to hold back the tears. I was with this boy from the start. I built him up to greatness, and I was forced to watch his decline after a tragic accident. And now, he was this thing, this abomination. I watched him go insane, holding my tears and wiping my eyes. I closed out the trainer card and tried to save the game, wanting to just quit. The game informed me this was impossible. Nothing can be saved now. The pause menu wouldn't close no matter what I did, so with no other option, I checked the bag. Nothing happened. I checked the Pokemon, and there was one. A single sprite met me. It had 0 HP. Its status, dead. Its name, Matt #. I selected it, and I was greeted with 4 options. Status, it's her. Switch, never. Close, no. Strangle. My fingers shaking, I selected Strangle, and the menu closed, showing Stephen in his room again. Goodbye. The game shut itself off. I was more dumbfounded than frightened. In a bit of shock, I turned it back on. The title screen showing the maniac Stephen in League speak and a horribly glitched Charizard. I pressed start, then continue. All I saw was a zoomed out view of Pallet Town, showing Stephen's home to the west, tall grass surrounding it, those unmovable stone blocks blocking it from the rest of town. The image was completely static, no music, no movement, before fading to white, going back to the title screen. It was as it is when I first popped it in, a trainer and a Charizard. I attempted to hit continue. No.